Shoutouts for this week go to Rick the Rock Pate, Love Minis, and Frosts and Fists.
Mind the gap.
So, welcome aboard this issue 4, and the first thing I'm going to do is rate the issue, and I'm going to give it a 10 because it's starting to look something. It's building up very quickly, and we've got more large surface area parts. Okay, they look like hull frames, but it looks like we can actually start to build the size up. It is a big model, and there's, given the size of it, I don't think there's an awful lot of weeks to build it, so it needs to build up size wise very quickly. So having a little flick through the magazine and checking the parts, we'll be working on 2 main areas, and there's actually 3 sections. Now there's 6 parts in total. Some of those are duplicated, such as, there's actually 5 main parts, because you've got 10 frame fixing screws and you've got 8 panel fixing screws, but you also have some 4-hole connectors, 2 pieces of framework, and the cockpit console front panel. The total build time was just over 30 minutes, so in that area it gets 10 points. I believe the instructions were absolutely spot on. Again, they are very careful. For example, to install the 2 extra pieces of hull frames, it actually gives you 9 pieces of instruction, and then to fit a piece of hull plating is 6. So again, very simplified, but a most enjoyable part, and there are no problems along the way. To give you an idea of the quality of this build, because this is issue 4, we're now beginning to get a feel of how the ratings are going to go. This is, in air quotes, among the worst issues of the 4. It's not the worst, and it wasn't the best, and it scores 92%. The average score is 92.5% for the entire build, and honestly, you cannot complain. Most of the areas where it falls down on are the number of parts, and with my other builds, sometimes I'm rating 1 point per part, and sometimes because they're so big and bulky and quality, I'm rating 2 points per part because you can't expect a lot. This kind of falls in between. They are, some of the parts, there's less of them. They're not particularly massive. They're not necessarily quality, as in, for example, one of my builds, you've got a nice shiny piece. The hull frames don't need to be super shiny and presentable because it's all underneath support. So it's perhaps suffers a little bit on the parts rating, but even so, it's coming through in other areas. It feels great, the instructions are great, and there's so few problems. So it's going to be hitting the 90% mark, I feel, for probably the entire build. So without further ado, we will continue to remove the parts. We'll check the parts are all there, and then we'll begin the build. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to work on is completing the cockpit console, and this comes in 3 stages. What we need to do is take the cockpit console front panel, which they've labelled part 1, that's a small black piece of plastic, and what we need to do is align 2 tabs, and there are yellow arrows on the magazine, and then we just need to push that into place. Be very careful, it is plastic. And then we need to push that into position so that the top edge fits under the instrument panel, and that is the console complete. Now you will notice that I don't have photographs of the completed stages. I do apologise, this is because I dropped my camera about a week or two ago, and it's completely damaged the lens. So that was me being a little bit silly, not storing things properly. It is a costly mistake, but I have now replaced the lens, which is actually coming through the post. So future issues I will have photos again. If there's any areas that you wish to have a photo of, then by all means just leave a comment and I will gladly retake photos. But for now I'm just going to try and get away with it. So you'll notice that maybe I'm perhaps trying to hold things up to the camera so that the webcam so that you can see them. So I do apologise. So now we move on to extending the hull frames. This involves attaching two pieces of framework, TF5 and TF6, and we need to attach that with the framework that we made in issue 2. And what we'll do is we'll start off with stage 1. You'll see I'm dry fitting there. We just bring that together. And you'll see that I'm also dry fitting the next part, the TF6 part, and you'll see there's already lugs there that we've done in previous issues, and then all we do is we just screw those into the lugs, and we will be using the frame fixing screws, and these are black button head screws, and we'll always be using the black button screws for anything to do with the framework. Okay, and as always I'd like to stress, do not over tighten the screws. Okay, so that should take you to stage 4, and for stage 4 we need a 4-hole connector, and we need to attach that where the join between the two new parts are on the left hand side. We need to attach that with two black button head screws so that there will be an overlap just on the left hand side. Okay, so then we take the framework TF5, that's part 2 in this magazine. It should be the final piece of framework. We position that into place so that we get kind of a triangle, a flat-headed triangle. It'll be a little bit off center, you'll see a bit pokey out, and then we need to connect that with the final screw in the 4-hole connector. That will now be in the middle, and again, do not over tighten. And stage 8 will be to, stage 7 will be to put in a connector to screws in the 4-hole connector, again using black button screws. I've actually done this the opposite way round, as you can see. I've just popped the 2 screws in the 4-hole connector, and the next stage is to go back and connect the screw into the final 4-hole in the middle. There you go. Now this is the opposite way round from the magazine, but it doesn't actually make too much difference. Again, I will stress, do not over tighten. And the final stage for extending the hull frames is section 9. We need to fit in a 4-hole connector. Unfortunately, the screenshot isn't too good here. It's right at the top of the screen there. You need to put a 4-hole connector in, attach that with 2 black button head screws so that there's an overhang of 2 holes. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm going through all of the screws and I'm just making sure they're nice and secure. However, do not over tighten. What I'm looking for is, have they worked loose? Are they in properly? Sometimes I put a screw half in just to hold it, then I'll pop the next screw in and I'll tighten that one up, and then perhaps I've forgotten to go back and fully put the screw in. So this is just a little test just to make sure everything securely has been placed in securely and it's not likely to fall out at a later stage. Okay, so we move on to the final assembly for this issue, and this is fitting the hull plating. This is perhaps my favourite section because suddenly with one piece of plastic the whole model is now starting to look like something. It's something that we can recognise as the Millennium Falcon, and it's superb. So we need to take the frame assembly that we've just finished making, and then we need to take part 10 from issue 1, that's the hull plating TP1, and we're just going to dry fit that. There should be 6 lugs and they should all line up with holes in the hull frame, and then what we will do is we will attach those with 6 silver self-tapping screws. Now, a word of warning, self-tapping means that they will cut the hole into the plastic. So what my advice would be to you is to pop one screw into one of the 4 corners and just pop it in about halfway or just enough so that it grabs. Then move on to the opposite corner. I like to often work top left, bottom right. Then when you've done the third one, the second one, then move up to the next corner and then do the 4th corner and then do the 2 center ones, then go back and tighten them up fully. Do not over tighten because this is plastic and plastic will break very, very easily, and because this is an outer plating it will show from the outside if you crack it. And again, make sure because these are self-tapping and they're actually going to create the thread, please make sure these screws are going in at 90 degrees to the screw hole. If you start to screw these in at an angle, it will go warped and it will look horrible. So take your time and do it gently. Okay, and there she is. She's looking beautiful. Now I will just give that a gentle push and a prod checking gaps, making sure that it's on strongly enough. It doesn't need to be on mega strong, because obviously it's not going to be getting lots of pressure from underneath, but I'm just giving it slightly more pressure than it would reasonably expect to get. So anybody who's watched any of my builds live on Twitch will know that we like to play with parts. Once we finish, we like to speculate where things are going to go, and here we're playing with the hull plating TP2 that we got from issue 3, and we firmly believe that that is where it's going to go. Look at the fit, it's beautiful. When it's in place, even though it's not held down, there's hardly any joins. Sometimes you can't even tell where it's going to join. It's absolutely wonderful. It's a joy to slide in. Obviously this will be fastened down, but they seem to be constructed in a way that each plastic panel supports the next panel along, a little bit like roof tiles, where if you just have the one row, then there's not very much support, but once you get the next row in and the next row, they're all adding a little bit of support to each other. I'm really happy with this build. You can see the 4 join lines, the 4 join screw holes. So as we add more sections of the framework, they will then become a section to join that in. And yeah, I'm really happy with this. Okay, and so that just leaves us with a section where we have a look at next week's issues, next week's parts, and we should be receiving a cockpit passage tube, some instrument panels, and the bit that I'm finding exciting, some cockpit lighting, and that's going to build more of the cockpit area that you can see there. So thank you for watching, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this as much as I have. Have a wonderful week. It looks like the summer is starting to arrive, or has arrived. I suspect by the time this is actually published, it should probably be over, knowing the UK. But whether you're having summer weather or you've had summer weather, I hope you enjoyed it.
Okay, so Rick the Rock Pate shouts, thanks for the shout out. Love Mini says, I really like the look of those seats. And Frost of Fist says, great video, Penny, those seats really match what I think the iconic shop would have. Wolf Brother Menthos. Thank you so much for the comments, guys, and I'll see you next week.